Okay, so let's make sure the slide is being shared. All right. Okay, here we are. All right, first I wanted to just make a couple of statements about stool testing, and then we can discuss it in a moment. First of all, there's no industry that has more BS than stool testing, and I want to explain that. The industry of stool testing exists because practitioners have developed good protocols, not because stool tests are good. Stool tests are being used for protocol compliance. And I challenge you on this, if you don't believe me, to take a stool test from any other competitor, do a split sample, and send the same test in under two different names, and you will find out there is only about 30% accuracy. And the reason people don't usually discover this is because most patients don't do their follow-up stool tests to see if they improve. So no one really knows how accurate these stool tests are. So you have to ask yourself, are those tests and those technologies the ones that are being used for scientific studies, for publications? Are they the ones that are being recommended, awarded, and used by the FDA? And the answer is no. And the third thing is that when we use a stool test, we're using it for seeking direction on a person's microbiome. But the truth is that stool tests take several weeks to get accurate results from, or inaccurate, regardless, depending on what company you're using, but still they take several weeks. So most practitioners start a protocol, and then the stool tests come back, and amazingly, we see that the tests are always bad. So it's working as a way of saying, patient, congratulations for doing your protocol and spending all this money, because see how bad your gut was, and now you feel so much better. But it's not really being used as a pre and post test. And that's why people have not noticed how inaccurate these tests really are. So now we're moving into a new age of testing. And this is the difference in technology advancement, the same difference between a Polaroid camera and an iPhone. So we are definitely disrupting the industry. And yes, there's going to be some, screw ups and some tripping over ourselves, because that's just what happens when you're introducing something so revolutionary. But I'm going to do the best that I can to help you through this. Know that I have not done this stool test yet myself. So I am learning along with you, but I'm trying to share that information that I think is really going to change the industry and help you. So the first thing, we're taking this sample report. We have patient Larry Young. And so the first thing we see on the summary page, and as the practitioner, I say, well, look, Larry, you are doing exceedingly well on your microbiome, because if you're 30 or above, your microbiome is excellent. So that's what we have here. Right off the bat, we see Larry has an excellent microbiome. The first thing we want to explain is what is alpha and beta diversity. So we look at Larry's here and we say, look, alpha diversity is like interstate inside the person's microbiome. What keystone strains do they have a good variety? And the beta diversity is like intrastate. So it's the difference between looking at the Texas microbiome versus Texas within the US microbiome. Okay, so we see here, Larry, you're smack dab where you should be on both of these, the alpha and the beta diversity. See the red dot here is right in the middle of the United States, we'll say, as far as norms. And then we look over here and we have the antibiotic resistome. And we see, first of all, that he's in the green zone. So that means that his microbiome is not carrying pathogens that carry antibiotic resistance. And that's a really good thing. Then we go down to the pathobiome. And we see also he is excellent in the pathobiome. That means doesn't have any pathogens. And we can tell that because we look at all the ranges. We look at the pathogens here. And it was 0, there's 0 in his sample of all of these. But if there were any of these pathogens, then there would be a nutritional suggestion, a lifestyle suggestion, and what microbiome supplements would help with that particular pathogen. Okay. Then we get down to the dysbiosis ratios. So we have the ratio between the Firmicutes and the Bacteroides, and we see that he's in this healthy range. And if it wasn't in the healthy range, then you'd be able to see what nutritional, lifestyle, and supplement recommendations there would be. The second ratio is the proteobacteria and the actinobacteria. And here you see what you can do. Here the Prevotella versus the Bacteroides ratio. And then what the suggestions are. Then we have some functional tests such as the ammonia producing versus the ammonia clearing. Again, both are within the range, but you can also see that when the ammonia producing is higher than the clearing, you have some suggestions over here what you can do. And the estrobiome, how well are you metabolizing estrogen? And here if the estrogen metabolism is low, then you have some suggestions here what to do. Sulfite reducing, do you have bacteria that are reducing sulfate, either high or low, and what to do about it? Methane producers, is it high or low, and what to do about it? And then there's a series of the functional keystone strains, and where does Larry fall on that? With the Akkermansia, with the Faecalibacterium, with the Ruminococcus species, and etc. And then it also shows the next version of FMX and what functional tests will be available there. So that is basically the test. You would focus on the areas that are outer range. But for Larry, since everything is good, we just, depending on what stage, if this is post-test, then at this point, everything is working the way it should. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up for questions. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Super. Julie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, so I went through quickly, just ran through the tests, made some comments in the beginning about stool tests in general. So what stood out to you?
Well, I actually I'm trying to get you on my computer because I was on my, I could hear you on my phone.
Okay.
So, and I can see the screen a little bit.
Okay. Well, know that this will be recorded too, so.
Oh, I'm really glad to, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'll be able to access that.
Super. So when it comes to stool testing, I don't know if how you use stool tests in your practice and what kind of the results have been. Do people come back for post tests and have you seen, I've seen tests where the post-test got worse, or
Yes, that's what I've seen as well.
yeah,
That they're way worse.
mhm. So a lot of times it doesn't make sense, you know, when you're it. And I've tested people, well, tested myself, you know, when I was kind of at my optimal health, and almost, I would say every single stool test I ever tested, you know, showed there was a big problem of some kind of pathogen or something going on. And so it never really
Right.
correlated with their symptoms. And then once we did a very successful protocol and people were feeling great, we'd test them again and it still showed something, you know.
Right.
So I think that's an indication too. It was a good way to get people on board to do a protocol because, wow, look at all this red, look at all these pathogens, and look how
Uh-huh.
bad it is. But were we really telling them the truth as far as creating a, you know, a valid test that was accurate and reproducible? That's where Kieran and Tom are saying, hey, if we have to do these tests, if the industry is, you know, insisting, then let's find the very best test that exists, and this is what they have presented.
Do you know if they've done that split test like you were talking about? I know it takes like 4, 5, 6 weeks to come back, and it hasn't been that long yet.
Right, yeah, this Cosmos ID has been verified with split tests, and they have tested other companies as well, and that's how they know that Cosmos is 98% accurate and the others are 30% accurate.
Okay. That's definitely significant.
Yes. And the other real significant thing is that this is the company that was chosen to do the testing for the Human Microbiome Project. And this is the company that has FDA awards and recommendations and is the one being used in scientific studies. Okay. So. Any other questions?
On the my gut antibiotic resistome, if a person was on antibiotics for a while, would it tend to have more antibiotic resistant pathology or microbiology?
Yes, that's the trend we would be looking for. Is are those who have been on the most and the long-term antibiotics showing more antibiotic resistance? Because that's what the science says will happen.
Okay, and if you did gut restoration, in theory, the amount of antibiotic resistant bacteria would decrease. Would that be a reasonable assumption?
Yes.
Okay.
Great questions. And know too that if you think of a question later, email me, text me, because, you know, this is going to take some, you know, getting into the weeds on, you know, digging deep, because it, you know, once you have that patient sitting in front of you, that's when we're really going to start, you know, digging into what this means and how it works, because it's one of those you have to learn by doing. We're just trying to anticipate, you know, what these results are going to look like and what questions there's going to be.
That makes sense. I do have another random question. In terms of if I present the idea of the stool test, would it be a reasonable statement to say, well, it gives you a good picture of your microbiome, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, and then if it's bad, how could we improve it? And it'll give you actual steps to improve it. That be about right?
Absolutely, yes. And as we saw from here, that graphically they can see, you know, this is saying that out of the 600,000 people that they have checked, their microbiome, you know, looks healthy. And within the region of all the microbiomes in their geographic area, their microbiome looks healthy. And if there was something that popped up, we have very clear recommendations through nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements what they can do about it.
Can you go back up to that first slide again?
Mm-hmm.
It just, a question just popped into my brain. So is that literal regions of the United States versus Texas, or is it the actual microbiome, like intestines in this area versus the whole entire area of the intestines?
Yeah, so these are, I was using the states as just to help you understand intra-testing versus like interstate versus intrastate, but these are
Yes.
just, these are microbiomes. So these are bacteria.
Okay.
Yeah, so this
Okay,
is,
good.
yeah. And it'll take a while, you know, reading through these descriptions too, to come up with your own analogies that make sense to your patient population, you know, because, you know, you know, have a way of communicating with them that
Yep.
helps break it down so that they get it. So, you know, you'll hear, if you listen to Kieran's explanations, you know, he'll talk about this is testing the richness and this is testing the uniformity. But when you get the different descriptions, you find one that makes the most sense to you and will make the most sense to your patients.
Sounds good.
But there's some, you know, key things that kind of resonated with me. And again, what I try to put across is the difference in the technology. We're looking at a Polaroid camera versus an iPhone, so that they understand that, you know, the you know, it's also, I've heard it explained as, you know, you put an elephant in the room and you put 5 people blindfolded and everybody touches the elephant and describes the environment based on that one area that they touched. And that's what current stool tests have been doing. They haven't been able to do enough segments to give you the whole picture, so they describe the person's gut in terms of just the foot or just the trunk or just the ear. But when you've got a whole genomic sequencing, you're able to do the entire elephant and take a you know, a bird's eye view and really find out what the personality of the microbiome is, how it responds, you know, the sulfur, the methane, the estrogen, all of these are personality characteristics that you can develop an idea of how this person is going to be able to, you know, function in their diet, with their hormone status, um, you know, with their detoxification, because of how their microbiome is responding. And here's an example too, you know, other tests will give you Escherichia coli, but they don't actually get it down to the strain number. And that's a big difference, because you could have an Escherichia coli that is a commensal in your gut, or you can have a hemorrhagic Escherichia coli that would kill you. So down to the strain level is extremely important. So are there any more questions?
No more questions on my end.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap this up and post it and send it out in case you want to check it out later. And until then, have an excellent week and take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.